I already covered the basics about coming out to your friends, and now here comes the most dreaded part. Coming out to your family. Coming out to family usually means coming out to your parents, which is a lot more complex than coming out to your friends. Reasons being that you only have one type of family and they're not as easily replaced, and depending on how you come out to them, it can change your future, and not in a good way either if you're not well prepared for what might happen when you come out. So before even thinking about writing that letter or that email or text message or what have you, put down that pencil or keyboard or phone and answer these questions. 1. How do they feel about transgender people? While not always an accurate predictor, it's good to know like how your parents feel about transgender people in general. It's an easy way to do that. You could casually bring up how you saw Chris Mosier in that Nike commercial, or how you recently read about how Laverne Cox recently got casted in that new film, Rocky Horror Picture Show. If they respond favorably, great. If not, you might want to back off a bit on coming out anytime soon and try again later. 2. Do you have a backup plan? Ideally, we want to come out and have our family, especially parents, be super supportive of us. Mamá, ¿qué pasa, hija? Hay algo que tengo que decirte y tal vez te vas a enojar. Bueno, ¿qué tienes que decirme? Bueno, mejor lo digo. Más soy transgénero. ¿Oh, eso es todo? ¿Cómo que eso es todo, ma? ¿No me escuchaste? Te dijo que soy transgénero. Está bien, hija. Solamente me tienes que decir lo que planificas hacer y te apoyo, ¿ya? Yeah, as you can imagine, that rarely happens. Most of us don't have supportive families like Jazz Jennings. And even if this was a possibility, you also have to think about other worst case scenarios where, depending on your age, life could get so much harder for you, or even worse, you might even get kicked out of your house. It's really best to look for shelters in your area, especially for LGBT folks, or even ideally transgender folks, or look for supportive friends that might be able to house you for a few days if things go way south. And I would highly recommend getting a job so you can save up money for those rainy days, because trust me, once you're kicked out, there's going to be a lot of rainy days ahead. 3. Can you afford to come out? Depending on where you are in life, especially if you're an independent and established adult with like your own income and you already moved out and everything, you could just come out to parents without really much drawbacks. I mean, the worst case scenario that's going to happen is they pretend the conversation never happened about gender identity or coming out, and they still address you with birth name and pronouns that you do not go by anymore. Or you could just remove yourself from cut off all contact with your family, or they cut off contact with you. It will definitely suck not having supportive family. I mean, it's not really required, but it would definitely be nice. But they're not going to adhere to you or do anything manipulative to get you to bend to their will, because you're out of that toxic environment. You already moved out. You already make money of your own. You're going to start having a family or a partner or whatever the case may be. You're not really under their control as you would have been if you came out as a teenager or somebody that's in college and needs their financial tuition and everything. Which brings me to my next point. If you happen to be in college where you depend on them for housing, finances, or college tuition, I wouldn't really recommend coming out to them, especially if it didn't respond favorably to you casually bringing up transgender people in general at some point in the conversation. At least not without a backup plan that I previously talked about. And I say that because a lot of parents could end up giving you an ultimatum where you say like, you better not transition or else I'm gonna cut off all your funding for your college tuition and basically screw you over. It can happen, and it's a very real possibility, so you have to be aware of that. And hopefully you'll have a job on your own as well as studying part-time, so you can mitigate that and save money should that ever happen, if transition happens to be the most important thing and it can't wait till you graduate college. 4. Are you going to therapy already? In some cases, you might already be seeing a therapist for other reasons, and you might have like came out as transgender, or you were already questioning your gender identity by some way in a session before. And if your therapist is supportive and they're willing to help you along, this could be a perfect opportunity to come out to your parents. And the good thing is you won't be alone in coming out, because you'll have your therapist there with you. You could always invite your parents over to your next session, and the therapist could help you come out to them and explain what transgender is, what this means for you, what this means for them, and the possible next steps depending on how they interact and how they receive this information. The good thing about having a therapist in your corner is that they're more willing to listen to a medical professional rather than their own kids, which is an unfortunate, sad reality, but something that could work in your favor if you happen to be in that situation. 5. What are your transition plans? Whether or not they're supportive is irrelevant in this question, because either way, even if they're not supportive, they're going to want to know what your plans are about your gender identity and what you plan to do to make yourself feel comfortable. A lot of parents out there, including my own, would definitely like to know what your plans are for your transition after you come out, whether or not they're supportive. I definitely had to know what I wanted to do before I came out, because my parents are going to always want to know what I plan to do about it, and they're not okay with I don't know answers. In fact, they don't even like those answers. They need to know, yes, I know what I plan to do and this is what I intend to do, XYZ. No, I don't know what to do, I need to do more research. They don't like I don't know. Now, I don't mean to say that you need to know your entire path, like you have the whole roadmap in front of you, but it's good to know a few small steps that you already planned for with or without their support. These are definitely questions that you need to ask yourself when coming out to your family, because it is definitely not easy. And you also have to take into account the personalities of the individual family members when choosing how to come out to them. I already covered the basics last video on the methods of coming out, but I will definitely talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each one in this scenario. Emails, text message. I would definitely not recommend this for your immediate family members, especially not text message. It's way too informal in my opinion, but it's an option. The good thing is that they're great if you're very scared of coming out in person. And you can also cover all the bases, include URL attachments for resources for further reading. However, they still have some drawbacks, a lot more than in the previous video. Once again, due to the electronic nature of the communication, the person could have read the email and hoping that the problem will go away, can pretend to have never received it, especially if they're not supportive. Very informal. It's not very intimate, since it's hard to convey feelings through email, text message without emojis, which you should not be using in the first place in this scenario. It could stay unopened for an indefinite amount of time, and email or phone is rarely used, and you won't really know for sure they read it unless they bring it up. I generally would not recommend this, especially if you have parents that may not even read this, and this is something that you have to come out to them about, because depending on what you plan to do, you can't really hide the changes from them forever. Handwritten letter. This is what I would personally recommend when you're coming out to your family. The good thing about this is there's a level of intimacy achieved with handwritten letters because you show effort into it. You'll know they received it because you're handing it into them in person, and they can also include some resources, though you can't really add URL attachments. However, there's a lot of drawbacks about this. One, it could be easily misplaced. You can't include clickable links to resources, which kind of sucks, but you can add titles and they can Google it. It can be ripped up and thrown out. Someone else could open it and it can lead to problems, let's say this handwritten letter was for mom, but dad suddenly sees it and he picks it up, and you weren't really ready to come out to him, so it can lead to some nasty problems. The person might have people around when they read it, so let's say your mom was reading it and your dad's right next to her and he reads it, which could basically get it over with the fear of coming out to your dad, since you wanted to individually come out to them, but it didn't really happen that way. And you also won't know when they read it either, unless you hand it to them, say, can you read it right now? Generally, they would probably hold on to it and probably never read it, or maybe they read it but they never brought it up, and whatever the case may be, that could be a possibility. The next one is direct confrontation. I definitely go against doing this, especially if you're a very shy person like myself, but I generally don't recommend this. For several reasons for family. Unless they're family members, then yeah, you could probably do direct confrontation, do that. But with parents, not so much, and I'm gonna go over why that is. The good thing about that is you will be guaranteed an answer, or at least some sort of response. More or less gives the person an opportunity to show how they really feel through how they're reacting, how they're talking, how they're receptive they are in their body language, whether they say something or not. The bad thing about this is your words might be drowned out through arguing. Depending how they feel, most of the time they might talk over you. You'll probably never get a word in, You'll probably not get the answer you might like. You'll be susceptible to forget everything you had to say or plan to say, so you're gonna leave a lot of stuff out unless you have like a paper in front of you. Very high risk of argument. Let's say you're talking about like how you're trans and everything, and maybe they start into an argument like, this can't be right, I didn't raise you to be like this, and all those kind of arguments. And also, you're probably prone to be interrupted by your parents or anyone who you're directly confronting. Let's say you're trying to talk and say like, and trying to moderate the discussion, be like, I'm gonna talk first and then you're gonna talk, so don't talk, but they might feel very strongly against what you're saying, and they could be interrupting you and be like, I'm sorry, but this can't be right, and blah blah blah, and XYZ, this can't happen because this, you were born this, you were assigned this. So this is why I generally don't talk or don't recommend direct confrontation, because especially if you have like argumentative parents that don't let you talk in general, like my own. Once again, it is important to use your best judgment in finding out which method would work best for your family. Even if they're not supportive right now, that could change. So what I advise to do is to leave the door open for them for when they're ready, so given time and everything to process everything you have said and what this means for you and them, and just continue what you need to do with your transition, and that is if you are safe enough to do so. And once again, I'm gonna have to advise strongly to find trans support groups in your area, because not only will you make friends, you'll also find that a lot of people struggled coming out to their families, and a lot of the responses were probably also negative or had like very similar experiences. Rarely will you find a family be supportive right from the get-go. Also, in these support groups, like, you might hear about similar experiences of how they came out, and who knows, they might even give you ideas that were not covered in this video. If you don't know where to start or how to come out to them, I included a letter template below in the video description. With that said, I hope everything goes great with coming out. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I will respond as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see y'all real soon.